Good afternoon. This is Dr. Christopher Dakanay. You can call me Doc Tov. And we're going to discuss the drugs acting on the gastrointestinal system. So first, we're going to discuss a bit of gross anatomy. Then we're going to tackle the basic physiology of the gastrointestinal tract. And that's the time that we're going to proceed to the pharmacology part. So, tip lang po, whenever you study pharmacology, you have to know the drugs and the drug classification. Once you know the drug classification of each drug, then it's safe to say that 50% you're almost there. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. You must know the drug classification. So when they mention a drug, automatically you should know the classification. For example, misoprostol. When you hear that, dapat alam mo na siya ay mucosal protectant. Omeprazole. Pag narinig mo yon, dapat alam mo na siya ay proton pump inhibitor. Okay? So parang ganun siya. So that's the first step in studying pharmacology. And then you don't have to memorize everything because number one, we don't have time. And number two, the things that you need to know for the board exam most likely are the must-knows. So I have reviewed the latest and the previous board examinations in pharmacology, and I can say that the questions are fair. The drugs are really the must-know, and then some of the concepts that are asked, or actually most of the concepts that they ask are the must-knows. So very, very few lang po yung mga nice-to-know questions in pharmacology. But still, despite the fact that they are asking the must-knows, most students still find pharmacology very difficult. I think the reason is that, number one, they hate it. Diba? Just like biochem, you hate pharmacology. Okay? And number two reason is the lack of familiarity with the drugs. So, therefore, I want you guys to, I'm not asking you to love pharmacology as much as I love it. But I want you to be familiar with the drugs and their drug classification. Okay? And more than that, besides passing or even topping the board exam, I want you guys to know the drugs themselves because at the end of the day, you're going to prescribe these medications. And we should know what we are prescribing. And we should know what to watch out for. And we should know why are we prescribing it. Okay, so I think that's the more important one because at the end of the day, your board exam will just be a mere test paper. Your scores will just be numbers. What you need to remember is that every knowledge that you acquire here, no matter how small, no matter how you think trivial they are, will one day change the lives of your patients. Okay, so we have to tell ourselves that we have to study this, number one, to pass the board exam, and number two, kasi kailangan siya. Dahil mahalaga siya. Alright? So for this afternoon, we will be discussing the drugs acting on the gastrointestinal system. Everything that I will be telling you is based on the source of the physician's licensure examination, which is Katzong. Okay? So you can read Katzung as your reference, but if you want, since we don't have time anymore, then you can just listen to this lecture. Okay, so I will act as if I'm the audiobook of Katzung, and I hope that I would give justice to it. Okay, so I will try my very best to make you appreciate and make you understand the drugs acting on the gastrointestinal system because it is not hard as it seems. All right, so let's start. Okay. So this is the gastrointestinal system, which starts from the mouth. Then you have here the pharynx, then the esophagus. And then you have here the stomach, the small and large intestines, then the rectum. Then we have here the accessory organs of the GIT. You have the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Okay, so you must know the anatomical correlations and the clinical entities that is related to each organ. All right, so that's it. You must know first gross anatomy of the GIT, because the drugs that we're going to discuss will just be acting on these organs that is present on this slide. Okay? So, GIT physiology of the stomach. The stomach is acidic. It has a pH of 1 to 3. Sometimes if you read other books like Harrison's, it says their pH 1 to 2. But one thing is constant, it's acidic. At hindi tayo mag-aaway dyan. All of us will agree that the stomach is acidic. And this is acidic due to the high hydrogen secretion. So when we say H+, this is the same as your HCl or hydrochloric acid. Because when we say H+, sometimes in the textbook, we are referring to the protonated form of your hydrochloric acid. Is that clear? So same lang siya. High H+, hydrogen concentration, same din siya sa high hydrochloric acid concentration. And that is because of the secretion of this cell, which is a must know in the board exam. So anong cell po yun? Yung nag-secrete ng HCl or responsible for acid production. What cell is that? Must know po yun. Very good. Your parietal cell. This was once asked in the board exam, but I saw the choices. Parietal cell is not there. They used the other name of parietal cell. That's why I want you to be familiar with it. The other name of parietal cell is your oxyntic cell. All right, oxyntic cell, that's the parietal cell responsible for the secretion of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Now, my dear students, I want you to be careful. Oxyntic cell is different from oxyphil cell. Where do you find oxyphil cells? What organ of the human body will you find oxyphil cells? Saan po? Correct, in the parathyroid gland. So ang pinag-uusapan natin ngayon, not the oxyphil, but the oxyntic cell. Oxyntic cell po. Okay? So again, parietal cell, oxyntic cell, same banana. They are the ones responsible for the secretion of hydrochloric acid or acid in the stomach. Ano pa yung isang sinesecrete niya? Very good, intrinsic factor. That is responsible for the absorption of what vitamin? Correct, vitamin B12. Okay, so there are other cells in the stomach. You have here your mucous neck cells. Mucous neck cells naman po, they are the ones responsible for the secretion of bicarbonate. Your G cells is the one responsible for the secretion of gastrin. Your Chief cells is the one responsible for the secretion of pepsinogen. Okay? And pepsinogen is a zymogen. It's an inactive form. That's why the other name of chief cell that also comes out in the board exam is your, very good, zymogenic cell. So chief cell, zymogenic cell, same banana. And then last, you have your ECL cell. This is your enterochromaffin like cells. Ano naman po ang sinesecrete ng ECL? Correct, histamine. So these are the must-knows for the board exam. Okay, so as we go on, I want you to already be familiar with this and I want you to memorize the things that you need to memorize. So that after this lecture, kahit hindi mo nabalikan yan, okay lang. Because again, we lack time in studying for the boards. Kasi pumalapit na. Okay, so therefore, I'm giving you 30 seconds. Please memorize this slide now. Okay, you can do it. Okay, finish? All right. So we move on to the next. Parietal cell of the stomach or the oxyntic cell release the hydrogen or the acid into the lumen of the stomach. And this is through the proton pump or what we call as the correct, the HK ATPase. HK ATPase pump, which is an active type of transport. So my dear students, please be careful. This is the HK ATPase pump. This is the proton pump. This is different from the NAK ATPase. Iba po yun. Iba si sodium potassium ATPase pump. Yun po ang ini-inhibit ng digoxin. Hindi po yun ang pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. We're talking about the HK ATPase pump or the proton pump. And this proton pump is receptive to many stimuli, such as your acetylcholine, your histamine, and your gastrin. Acetylcholine, histamine, and gastrin. Ibig sabihin po, itong mga ligands na to, when they bind to their specific receptors, which is found on the parietal cell, then it will now stimulate the proton pump to release acid. So in short, itong tatlong to ang nagpapataas po ng acid secretion. Okay? So let's talk about the receptors. Your acetylcholine binds to the muscarinic receptor. Anong muscarinic receptor po? Your muscarinic 3 receptor. Okay, it's your M3 receptor, the one that is found on the GIT, on the different glands of the body. Muscarinic 3 po yun. Okay, dun po magbabind si acetylcholine. Si histamine naman po, magbabind kay, of course, H2 receptor. Not the H1, but the H2 receptor because we're talking about the GIT. And then your gastrin, of course, binds to your gastrin receptor. Later on, I'm going to show you how they look like and how they interact with one another. Okay? So, this is a diagram from Katzung. So, paano nga po ba napoproduce ang gastric acid? Okay, paano ba? So, we will start first from the stimulation coming from the vagus, preganglionic, and postganglionic nerve. Okay? So, mag-uumpisa po yan dito. So, stimulation po ng vagus nerve, it will stimulate the G cells. This is the G cell to produce gastrin. Okay? So, gastrin now will travel in the blood vessel. So, gastrin will bind now to the gastrin receptor or the gastrin CCKB receptor, which is found on the parietal cell. So, labelan muna natin. This is your parietal cell. This is your D cell. This is your G cell. And this is your enterochromaffin-like cells. We have discussed that a while ago. Okay? So again, magi-stimulate po si vagus nerve papunta kay G cell. And when G cell is activated or stimulated, i-release niya na si gastrin, yung color green. So si gastrin ngayon will travel and it can bind now to the gastrin receptor in the parietal cell, which is the GCCKB receptor. Some of the gastrin can also bind to the gastrin receptor found on the enterochromaffin-like cell. So when the enterochromaffin-like cell is activated through your gastrin, histamine now will be released. And histamine now will bind to the H2 receptor in the parietal cell. Is that clear? Another thing, vagus nerve, sabi natin dito, can stimulate the gastrin or the G cell, which we have discussed a while ago. Also, the vagus nerve can directly stimulate the parietal cell by secreting acetylcholine, which will bind to the muscarinic 3 receptor of the parietal cell. So as you can see here, Ito po yung tatlo na inaral natin kanina. Acetylcholine, histamine, and gastrin. Para hindi nyo makalimutan, just remember, HAG, HAG. Yung HAG po ang nagpapataas ng gastric acid. Because yung HAG, your histamine, acetylcholine, and gastrin, sila pong tatlo ang mag-activate ng parietal cell. At kapag ang parietal cell po ay activated, the proton pump now, which is your HK-ATPase, will be activated. When this is activated, hydrogen ions now, which corresponds to your acid, will be secreted into the lumen in exchange of potassium ion. But we don't talk about or we don't give focus to the potassium. Ang pakialam natin, si acid. So as you can see there, when HK-ATPase pump or the proton pump is activated, hydrogen ions now or acid will be released. Is that clear? Now, when there is now excessive acid here, it will now send stimulus to the D cell. So kapag na-detect na ni D cell na, uy, masyado na madaming acid, the D cell now will release somatostatin. And somatostatin now will bind to the somatostatin receptor in the G cell, inhibiting now G cell's release of gastrin. So if you are going to go back, everything starts with gastrin release. Tama ba? So that's how gastric acid in the stomach is produced and controlled. So as you can see here, ito po ang pinanggalingan ng acid, the HK-ATPase, because of the binding of these three ligands, your HAG, histamine, acetylcholine, and gastrin. So therefore, when you want to decrease gastric acid production, you will play around with this chemical substances. Tama ba? So when you inhibit acetylcholine, mababawasan ang activation ng HK-ATPase, mababawasan ang hydrogen ion or acid secretion. Kaya lang, pag si acetylcholine ang hinarangan mo, andun pa rin si histamine at gastrin. So it won't be that effective. On the other hand, when you give a drug that will inhibit histamine, bababa nga si hydrogen ion production through the proton pump, kaya lang, andun naman si acetylcholine at gastrin. So therefore, they are effective, pero hindi masyado. Is that clear? So therefore, do we have drugs acting on acetylcholine? Yes, your anticholinergics. Do we have drugs acting on histamine? Yes, your H2 blockers. Kaya lang sabi natin, they are not that fully effective. Kasi meron, kung ma-block man sila, may iba pang pathway that will stimulate HK-ATPase or the proton pump. So, knowing that, you can inhibit the common pathway of the three of them. Ano ang common pathway nilang tatlo? The proton pump. So, is there a drug blocking HK-ATPase or blocking the proton pump? Meron po ba? Meron. Your proton pump inhibitors. So that is the summary of the drugs given for hyperacidity. Okay, naintindihan? So if you just know a little bit of physiology, then it's a very, very big step already on understanding the pharmacology of the drugs and their mechanism of action. Okay, so I'll give you 1 minute. Consolidate your knowledge here before we move. All right? So we move now. Common GIT conditions. Number 1 is dyspepsia. Actually, dyspepsia is not a diagnosis. It's a collection of symptoms of bloatedness, epigastric pain, nausea. So when you say dyspepsia, this is actually a chronic or recurrent upper GIT symptoms not explained by biological or anatomic abnormalities. But it does not imply that there is no physiological basis for it. It's just that we we cannot find any evidence when we do endoscopy or any imaging procedure because as I have told you, it is not explained by biochemical processes or structural abnormalities. Okay? So, when you say dyspepsia, kasama po dyan yung mga functional dyspepsia, non-ulcer dyspepsia, idiopathic dyspepsia, etc. All right? So that is dyspepsia. And usually for dyspepsia, we have to investigate the cause or you do diagnostic procedures such as endoscopy if needed. Okay? Or you can start right away with PPI trial, okay, using omeprazole. Okay, so that is dyspepsia. Next is gastritis, wherein the patient experienced burning epigastric pain but without vomiting. Okay? So these are the common terms. Next is GERD. Okay, commonly called heartburn because the number 1 symptom of gastroesophageal reflux disease or GER, gastroesophageal reflux, is heartburn or a burning sensation in the chest, right? So symptoms include radiating burning or pain in the chest, acidic taste, and recurrent abdominal pain. Esophagitis that is meal-related is primarily due to reflux of stomach content. So ito po, recently, maraming tinanong regarding GERD in surgery and in pathology. So pag sinabi pong GERD, the number 1 or the definitive management for it is fundoplication surgery, the Nissen fundoplication surgery. Okay, and when you say GERD, ano pong mga pagkain ang bawal? Of course, the acidic ones. Bawal po ang acidic, bawal din po ang maaanghang, bawal din po ang maasim like vinegar. Okay, yan yung mga bawal po when we have GERD. Okay, I guess you know that because it's a very, very common condition. So this is the function of the esophageal sphincter. The esophageal sphincter prevents reflux of gastric contents to the esophagus. So the problem when you have GERD is that there is a laxity or incompetence of the sphincter. Okay? Not incompetence of the government. I don't like to emphasize that, but parang ganun na nga. Okay? Incompetence po ng esophageal sphincter. Okay? So kaya po nagkakaroon ng reflux leading to the symptoms of heartburn. Ngayon po pag umakyat yung gastric contents going up, going to the larynx, ang tawag na po doon LPR, laryngopharyngeal reflux, which later on can present with hoarseness of voice. Diba? Okay. So, these are the factors contributing to GERD. Pregnancy, overeating, eating on the run, eating late at night, drinking alcohol. Okay? I will emphasize this. So yung mga may GERD dyan, wag muna uminom. Uminom na lang ng tubig. Smoking cigarette and food that are high fat with caffeine, citrus, and those that are spicy. So these are the factors contributing to GERD. But again, the major cause of GERD are not these factors. But again, the incompetence of the, very good, the government. Joke, the incompetence of the sphincter. Correct. Okay. So, how about peptic ulcer disease? Ano naman po yan? So, peptic ulcer disease, there is already a breach or an aberration of the gastric protectant or the gastric protective mucosa. Okay, leading now to ulceration or pagsugat-sugat po ng gastric mucosa. So, these are the factors increasing it, like your H. pylori, NSAID, acidic agents like food, acidic drugs, pepsin, and smoking. Okay, so, but among all of this, The only two proven causes of peptic ulcer disease is your H. pylori and NSAID. Okay, H. pylori and NSAID. Then the factors decreasing it would be mucus production, buffers like your bicarbonate, which is secreted by the mucous neck cells. Another thing is perfusion and prostaglandin. So I want to emphasize this to you. Remember that prostaglandin is a protective factor of the gastric mucosa. Okay? So that's it. So we go now to the pharmacology part. We will be studying the drugs for hyperacidity, mucosal protectants or the mucosal protective agents. Next are the drugs that would increase gastric motility. Okay, or we call this the prokinetic drugs. Okay, prokinetic drugs. And then we will now go to laxatives, the ones that we use for constipation and of course for diagnostic procedures like your colonoscopy and your proctoscopy. Okay, so these are the outline of what we're going to discuss. Okay, so are you guys ready? All right, so drugs for hyperacidity can be grouped into three. Number one, antacids. Number two, H2 antagonists, or what we call as your H2 blockers. And number three, and the most effective one among all these three, is your proton pump inhibitor, or the inhibitors of the HKAT pace. Is that clear? All right. So we first go to the first group of drugs for hyperacidity, and that is your antacids. So these antacids interact with the produced hydrochloric acid. So ina-emphasize ko po dito na itong mga antacids na to, hindi po nila dinedecrease ang hydrochloric acid secretion. Again, they do not decrease HCl secretion. Ano ang ginagawa nila? Yung mga na-produce na pong HCl, yun ang nineutralize nila. They neutralize it. Is that clear? And under antacids, you have here your sodium bicarbonate, calcium carbonate, aluminum hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide. So what did you notice? All of them are bases. Very good. Sila pong apat are bases. Bakit? Kasi kailangan natin ng bases in order for us to neutralize the produced acid. Okay, so basic chemistry, when you have a base and an acid, it will undergo neutralization reaction in order for us to produce salt and water. Okay, so these are your antacids. I want you to remember that generally speaking, antacids are not significantly absorbed. Again, antacids are not significantly absorbed in the GIT mucosa except your sodium bicarbonate and calcium carbonate. Okay? So, sila po ang may kakayahan ma-absorb in the GIT. But for your aluminum and magnesium hydroxide, they are not absorbed in the GIT. So these drugs are available in the pharmacy as a single agent, or you can also find them in combination, like your aluminum hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide. Okay? And also, sila po, besides neutralizing the produced acid, they also stimulate mucosal prostaglandin production. So ibig sabihin, you are hitting two birds with one stone when you give antacid. Nineutralize mo na yung na-produce na acid, and at the same time, nag-i-stimulate ka pa ng prostaglandin production. Is that good? Yes, because what we have discussed a while ago is prostaglandin is a protective agent, right? Okay. Now, here's what I want you to remember. Katzung mentioned, and this is also asked on the boards, but not recently. If I'm not mistaken, 2016 boards. So, ang tanong po is that, how is potency of antacid measured? Okay? So potency is measured through what we call as the acid neutralizing capacity. So Doc, ano po yung acid neutralizing capacity? Acid neutralizing capacity refers to the quantity of 1 normal hydrochloric acid in milliequivalents, this is the unit, to be brought up to pH 3.5 within 15 minutes. Okay? So ibig sabihin po ng acid neutralizing capacity, gaano po kadaming acid yung kaya pong in-neutralize such that the pH now will go up to 3.5 within 15 minutes. So yun po ang acid neutralizing capacity. So ibig sabihin, the higher the acid neutralizing capacity, the more potent it is. Okay? Is that clear? The higher the acid neutralizing capacity, the more potent it is. Okay? So, ano po ba ang mga pH goals natin? Kasi we are giving antacids with the hope of increasing the pH. Tama ba? But syempre, kung gusto mong itaas, kailangan alam mo kung ano ba ang hinahabol mo. Hindi pwedeng gusto mo lang na tumaas yung pH. Dapat may goal ka. Just like everything in life, dapat may goal ka. Tama ba? So, ano ba ang goal natin? So, ito yung hashtag natin. So, lagyan natin ng hashtag. Hashtag pH goals. O, diba? Parang relationship goals. pH goals naman. pH of 3 for healing ulcer. pH 4 naman po for stress ulcers. Okay? And you want to reach a pH of 6 for bleeding ulcer. Ano yung favorite dyan itanong? This one, bleeding ulcer. So when you have an ulcer that is bleeding, then kailangan ang goal mo mas mataas na pH, which is pH 6. Kung ulcer lang, na char-char lang, then pH 3 lang. Okay? Is that clear? So all of this are given 1 to 3 hours after meals. So again, you give them after meals. Bakit? Kasi syempre, pag kumain ka, doon pa lang magpo-produce ng acid. Eh di ba ang target mo yung produce na acid kasi yun yung ino-neutralize mo? So you must give them after meals. Okay? Don't give them before meals. Is that clear? Okay. All right. So let's move on. So, your antacids are fast-acting but short duration. So remember this property of drug. So generally, ganito po ang mga gamot. Yung mga fast-acting, short duration sila. Ganun po ang general property ng mga gamot. Meron lang po tayong exceptions to the rule. So basta ang rule po natin, kung fast-acting, short duration yan. Parang ganito. Kung mas mabilis mong nakuha, mas mabilis din mawawala. Okay? So parang yung mga antacids, fast-acting but short duration. So, what are their adverse drug reactions? For sodium bicarbonate, belching, dighay ng dighay, utot ng utot. Bakit? Because of the presence of bicarbonate. Because later on, bicarbonate will be converted to carbon dioxide. Okay? It can also worsen hypertension because of sodium. Remember the concept? Where sodium goes, water follows. So therefore, if that happens, there would be an increase in the circulating blood, leading now to an increase in the venous return. So kapag mataas ang venous return, mataas po ang cardiac output. Kung mataas ang cardiac output, then mataas ang blood pressure. That's the mechanism. Okay? And since this is a base, it can cause milk alkali syndrome, which presents with metabolic alkalosis. Metabolic alkalosis. Okay? Calcium carbonate can cause belching because again of the carbonate, which will then later on be converted to carbon dioxide. And also hypercalcemia because this is calcium. So question, sino sa dalawa ang nagkakos ng nephrolithiasis? I just remember that, which recently came out in the boards. Sinong antacid daw yung nagkakos ng nephrolithiasis or kidney stone? Very good. Your calcium carbonate because of calcium. Okay? Because of calcium. So, generally speaking, ADR nila, bukod dyan sa mga binanggit natin, they can increase gastric pH, right? So, they can make the pH of the stomach alkaline. So, kapag na-alter po nila yung pH sa stomach, then acidic drugs or absorption of acidic drugs can be affected. Kasi 'di ba, naalala pa ba in our pharmacokinetics, acidic drugs are best absorbed in the stomach because the stomach has an acidic medium. So when you give your antacid, pwedeng maging alkaline yung medium at pwedeng ma-alter po ang acidic drug absorption. So dapat they should be taken 2 hours before or after the ingestion of other drug to prevent drug-drug interaction. Okay? Another thing, aluminum hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide. The thing that you need to remember, most common adverse effect of aluminum hydroxide is constipation. The opposite for magnesium is diarrhea. So how do we remember this? Magtatae. So kapag magnesium, diarrhea. Aluminum, ala-tae. Ala-tae. So therefore, aluminum hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide, we combine them together in order for us to cancel out their effects. Can you think of a drug wherein aluminum hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide is combined? Anong gamot yon? Very good. Simeco. Di ba sabi? Aluminum hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide. Simethicone is the generic name of Simeco. If symptoms persist, consult your doctor. O, di ba? So mamaya aaralin natin at makikilala nyo sino yung simethicone. Okay? So for now, tandaan, aluminum hydroxide, constipation. Magnesium hydroxide, magtatae, diarrhea. Is that clear? Okay, good. Okay, so we go now to the next classification or the next group for your drugs for hyperacidity. We have your H2 antagonists, also known as your H2 blockers. H2 antagonists inhibit basal acid production, number 1. So yung basal acid production po, ini-inhibit niya. Pangalawa, also the prandial acid release. Ibig sabihin, yung additional acid na na-produce after meals or during meals. Okay? So dalawa po ang ini-inhibit niya ha, basal acid production and prandial acid release. Okay? So your H2 blockers are effective in the treatment of GERD, peptic ulcer disease, and your NUD or non-ulcer dyspepsia. It's also used in the prevention of stress-related gastritis. Okay? In seriously ill patients like your ICU patients or post-op patients, trauma patients, we use that. Okay? Although they are still used widely, their clinical use is being supplanted or nasasapawan siya by the more effective and equally safe proton pump inhibitors. So as you can see, ang role niya inhibits basal acid production and inhibit prandial acid release. Basically, same with your proton pump inhibitors. Okay? Kaya lang po, kahit ginagamit pa siya, their clinical use, again, sabi ko sa inyo, is supplanted. Ibig sabihin, meron pang mas okay sa kanya. Kaya nasasapawan siya. At ano yun? Yung more effective and equally safe na proton pump inhibitors. Okay? So later on, we will go to the proton pump inhibitor. So ngayon, tignan muna natin sino yung mga kasama sa tinatawag nating H2 blockers or H2 antagonists. So madali lang po kasi they have a common denominator in their name. All of them end with tidine. Cimetidine, famotidine, nizatidine, and ranitidine. So all of them have similar structure. Okay, so the structure is based, their structure is based on the modification of histamine. So therefore, modification lang po ng histamine. Like for example, pag sa histamine po, lagyan natin ng imidazole ring. Imidazole ring, then yan po ang main nucleus ng cimetidine. Pag yung histamine naman po, lagyan natin ng furan ring, yan po ang nasa ranitidine. Pag yung histamine po, lagyan natin ng thiazole ring, yan po ang nakikita sa nizatidine and your famotidine. So madaling tandaan ha, imidazole, ime, cimetidine. So imidazole, hanapin nyo yung may ime. That's your cimetidine. Furan, ranitidine. And then thiazole as your nizatidine and your famotidine. Okay? So remember this. This was once asked on 2018 boards. Ang lumabas po doon, si imidazole, so cimetidine. Okay? So, all of them as a group are rapidly absorbed. Okay? And they are not affected by food. Again, as a group, they are rapidly absorbed and they are not affected by food. They can also cross placenta. So here's the catch. When they cross placenta, are they teratogenic? Not necessarily. They can just pass through the blood placental barrier, but they are not teratogenic. So that's the magic of your H2 blockers. They also have rapid hepatic metabolism. So ibig sabihin, mabilis po silang tinatanggal ng liver. Kaya po, once a day dosing is not enough. So yun yung major or main disadvantage niya as we compare it to your proton pump inhibitors. Kasi ang proton pump inhibitors po, once a day lang. Unlike your H2 blockers, since they have a very rapid hepatic metabolism, hindi natin sila pwedeng ibigay once a day. Okay? Kasi it will not reach the therapeutic concentration needed. Okay? So, we have discussed that as a group. So, punta tayo sa mga peculiarities ng bawat isa. First is cimetidine. Siya po yung pinakalolo nilang lahat. So, siya yung unang-una, the first H2 blocker. Kaya po, ang kanyang pharmacokinetic profile, medyo pangit. Okay? Marami din siyang ADRs like your alopecia, loss of libido, impotence, and irregular menstruation. Okay? So, endocrine side effects po ang ayaw natin kay cimetidine. So, you can notice here, kaparehong-kapareho niya po ang side effects ng ketoconazole when you study your antifungal medications. 'Di ba? Yan din yon. Si ketoconazole, ayaw din natin sa kadahilan ng meron siyang kinukos na endocrine side effects. Okay? Parang cimetidine din. Nawala nga yung sakit ng tiyan mo, nawala din yung buhok mo. Nawala din yung libido mo. Nawala din yung mo. Okay? So that's your cimetidine. So that's why nowadays we don't prescribe this anymore. Okay? You won't prescribe this anymore. So ang meron tayo, famotidine, nizatidine, and ranitidine. Ito po siguro ang pinakakilala nyo, your ranitidine, which is mostly used. Okay? Meron din itong IV form na ginagamit naman natin pag anaphylaxis, right? Meron din siyang oral form na ginagamit natin as an antacid. Now, famotidine and nizatidine, anong common sa kanila? Very good, thiazole ring. And also, these are the oral medication. These are oral medications that can give you almost 100% bioavailability. Okay? So that's the magic naman of your famotidine. Oral sila, pero ang bioavailability niya halos kagaya ng IV. Not 100, but almost 100% bioavailability. So that's why, ganun din po ang presyo nila. Napakamahal din. Kung gaano kataas ang bioavailability, ganun din kamahal ang presyo nila. Okay? So, I think here in the Philippines, we do away from prescribing this, famotidine and nizatidine. But in other countries, since may insurance and libre, then they can prescribe that. At kita nyo naman po, napakaganda ng kanyang bioavailability. Okay? And then sabi nga natin, dosing twice a day. So once a day is not enough because of what? Rapid hepatic metabolism. Very good. Okay? That clear? Okay. Okay, so now we have the most effective group, the proton pump inhibitors, or the drug that inhibit the HK ATPase, or the hydrogen potassium ATPase pump, which is found in the parietal cell and is responsible for acid secretion. Very good. So these are our proton pump inhibitors: omeprazole, esomeprazole, lansoprazole, pantoprazole, and your rabeprazole. So all of them have common denominator again with regards to their name. Lahat po sila nag-end sa prazole, prazole, prazole. Now I want to emphasize one drug, which is our aripiprazole. I want to highlight this because aripiprazole is not a proton pump inhibitor. Even though it ends with prazole, just like all of them, please take note, my dear students, that aripiprazole is not a PPI. Again, aripiprazole is not a PPI. Aripiprazole is an antipsychotic agent, right? You see this in CNS drugs. If I'm not mistaken, that's chapter 29, something like that, 28 or 29 in your Katzung. So it's an antipsychotic drug. It's a partial dopamine agonist. So that's your aripiprazole. So gusto ko lang po emphasize because aripiprazole is not a PPI. Okay? So all your PPI are pro-drugs. Again, all of them are pro-drugs. And when they enter the parietal cell, when they diffuse into the parietal cell canaliculi, they become protonated. And when they become protonated, ibig sabihin nun, ma-activate sila and yung kanilang potency will increase up to 1,000-fold. So ganun siya ka-powerful. So una, tulog siya kasi nga pro-drug siya. Pagdating niya po sa parietal cell canaliculi, it will now become protonated. And then, the potency will become 1,000-fold. Okay? Then, when it enters the parietal cell, it will go immediately to the proton pump or the HK-ATPase and irreversibly block it. Again, irreversibly block it. Is that clear? Okay? So again, your proton pump inhibitors are the most effective. And what is their MOA? They irreversibly block. So remember this, they irreversibly block the proton pump. So again, when they enter the parietal cell canaliculi, they become activated. They become protonated, and then their potency is increased into 1,000 times. And that's the time that they will inhibit the proton pump irreversibly. Again, irreversibly. Is that clear? They are fast acting and long duration. Okay, but they have short half-life. So remember that half-life is not the same as duration of action. They have short half-life. Okay, so if you notice, your proton pump inhibitors are given usually in a once-a-day dosing, right? Usually in our Cigna, we write give 1 capsule, like your omeprazole, for example, or pantoprazole, 1 capsule once a day, 30 minutes before breakfast. This is a usual Cigna, right, for the proton pump inhibitors. So my question is, bakit pwede natin siya ibigay once a day lang? Bakit po? Bakit hindi siya kagaya ng mga antacids, ng mga H2 blockers na kailangan more than once a day ang dosing? Pero bakit ang mga PPI, once a day lang, pwede na? Why? Don't answer me because they have long half-life. Wrong. They have short half-life. Okay? So the answer is, your proton pump inhibitors have long duration of action. Bakit po? It's not because of the half-life. It's because it irreversibly blocked the proton pump. And it would take 18 to 24 hours for the parietal cell to make or produce another proton pump. So, ibig sabihin po, umaga pa lang, nung binigay mo na si PPI mo, na-block niya na si proton pump. And since it irreversibly blocks the proton pump, touch move na yan. Pag na-block mo, block na siya. And again, it would take 18 to 24 hours for the parietal cell to make another proton pump. So by the time nagagawa ulit or makagawa ulit ng proton pump si parietal cell, i-administer mo na naman yung gamot mo. Iinom ka na naman ng gamot mo. So that's how it goes. Kaya po, once a day lang siya, 30 minutes before breakfast. Again, they have short half-life. Common mistake kasi yan. Akala nila na kapag nagbigay ka ng PPI, once a day lang kasi long half-life. Wrong po. Short half-life. Actually, usually 1 to 3 hours, 1 to 4 hours. Ganun lang po ang half-life nila. But they have long duration of action. Bakit? Because they irreversibly block the proton pump. And it would take 18 to 24 hours for the parietal cell to make another proton pump. Is that clear? Okay. I hope I made it clear. So all of them, again, are prodrugs. They need to enter first the parietal cell canaliculi in order for them to be activated and protonated, right? And they are converted only in the intestines. And they are destroyed by gastric acid. So knowing this, their dosage form is enteric coated. Always enteric coated. So that it will be protected from the destructive forces of the gastric juice. Okay, so that's why they are enteric coated, and also that adds to the price of these medications. Besides being effective, enteric coating siya, so mas mahal kasi mas maraming ingredients ang ginagamit. So the oral formulations are enteric coated again to prevent acid inactivation in the stomach and to, of course, prevent from the destructive forces of the gastric juice. Okay? But again, let me emphasize, they have short half-life. They have short half-life but long duration because they irreversibly block the proton pump. So these proton pump inhibitors, my dear students, are more effective than H2 blockers for GERD, for the treatment of GERD and peptic ulcer disease, right? But when we talk about dyspepsia, we consider them equal footing lang po. And your proton pump inhibitors are also used for the treatment of Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Ginagamit din po natin siya. Is that clear? Okay. So let's compare them using different pharmacokinetic parameters as to bioavailability, the maximum concentration or the peak that it can reach, the area under the curve, which corresponds to its duration of action or extent of distribution, then excretion, and then the pKa. All right? But we don't need to memorize everything here. I'm going to emphasize to you the things that you need to memorize for the board exam. All right? So all of them are proton pump inhibitors. Okay? So pag tinanong sa board exam, sino sa kanilang lahat ang pinaka bioavailable? So let's rank them. Lansoprazole, rank 1. Pantoprazole, rank 2. Esomeprazole, rank 3. Rabeprazole, rank 4. Omeprazole, Colelat, rank 5. So yung pinaka-favorite natin ibigay, pinaka-common, siya pa yung pinaka-pangit ang bioavailability. So what's the reason for giving it? Because it's mura. Okay? Pero if your patient has budget naman, then you can choose among the PPI that has a better bioavailability, like your lansoprazole and your pantoprazole. Alright? This is pantoprazole. Kaya lang, sabi ko, mahal siya. Alright? So how do we arrange them para maalala mo? Based on their bioavailability. So from highest to lowest, just remember, El Pero. Okay? Lansoprazole, pantoprazole, esomeprazole, rabeprazole, and omeprazole. Okay? So you can see here that omeprazole, less than 1/2 pa nga ang bioavailability niyan. Pero pwede na. Pwede na. Although there are better drugs, but omeprazole is pwede na. Alright? Cmax, no need to remember this. Area under the curve, no need to remember this. This one is you need to remember. All of them are renally excreted except lansoprazole. Again, all of them are renally excreted except lansoprazole. Because lansoprazole is excreted through the biliary system or through the feces. Kung yung iba, iniihi natin, sila lansoprazole po, pinupupo siya. Okay? That is your lansoprazole. Those are the things that you need to remember for this slide. Okay? So, pharmacodynamic-wise, they inhibit both fasting and meal-stimulated secretion, just like your H2 blockers. And then the standard dose inhibit 90 to 98% of 24-hour acid secretion. What's the reason? All because it irreversibly inhibits the proton pump or the HK-ATPase. Okay? So, again, these proton pump inhibitors are the most effective for the treatment of GERD and PUD. And we also use this for the diagnosis of GERD, right? For using the PPI trial. Ito din yung ginagamit natin for NSAID-induced ulcers. And actually, ito yung binibigay talaga natin for patients na kailangan talaga mag-NSAIDs, like those that are maintained on aspirin, right? As an antiplatelet, like patients that are post-stroke, post-MI, naka-maintain sila ng aspirin. We cannot tell them naman na stop the aspirin, right? Because that's needed. So kapag ganun po, may NSAID use si patient and we cannot help that, then we can add the use of your proton pump inhibitors. Okay? Also, we use this for active GI bleeding, right? In upper or lower gastrointestinal bleeding, which is an emergency. Kaya lang, the difference is that we give it through IV bolus. O, sige nga, review. What's the dose kapag GI bleeding? What's the dose of your PPI or your omeprazole? It's 80 milligrams per IV, right? Bolus, that's bolus. Or pwede mo i-divide yan na tig 40 milligrams per IV bolus. Okay? Then constant infusion of 8 milligrams per hour. Diba? That's how we manage gastrointestinal bleeding. Okay? So, adverse drug reactions, they are relatively safe due to their short half-life. Again, they have short half-life. So, ulit-ulit ko po yan i-emphasize. So, that's why, because of their short half-life, they are generally safe. And they are not teratogenic. Okay? Although there are still not enough studies done on humans. So, hindi pa rin siya ganun. Hindi natin pwede sabihin talaga na safe siya sa tao. Although animal studies show that they are not teratogenic. Pero syempre, tao pa din ang usapan. Okay? So, adverse drug reactions, again, of this proton pump inhibitors, they are uncommon. Okay? Pero if meron man, ayan yon: abdominal discomfort, nausea, dizziness, vomiting. Sometimes, they can cause diarrhea and headache. But again, sabi ko sa inyo, they are infrequent. Okay? Because of their short half-life. Okay? Drug-drug interaction that is of broad importance. Omeprazole and clopidogrel. So what's the drug interaction here? Omeprazole is a CYP inhibitor. It inhibits cytochrome P450 enzyme. And clopidogrel is activated by CYP. So therefore, when you give them sabay, what will happen? All right? Your omeprazole will inhibit the CYP. And therefore, clopidogrel will not be activated. So, is this delikado? Yes, right? So, imagine you have a patient that is maintained on clopidogrel. Let's say post-stroke siya or post-MI siya. So, maintain siya on clopidogrel as an antiplatelet. Tama ba? So, ngayon, if yung patient na yon na matagal nang naka-maintain ng clopidogrel, let's say for some reason biglang nag-GERD, and then you prescribe your omeprazole, what will happen now? Clopidogrel that he or she is taking regularly won't be activated. So ano mangyayari? Mas malaki yung chance na magkaroon ng thrombosis. So pwede siyang magkaroon ng reinfarction or re-stroke. Tama ba? All because of the omeprazole. So therefore, anong gagawin natin? Shall we remove the clopidogrel? Of course not. Kasi yan yung kailangan ng patient mo. What you can adjust is your PPI. So bakit pa kasi natin ipipilit si omeprazole if meron namang iba na mas better kaysa sa kanya? Right? So you prescribe your pantoprazole, your lansoprazole, which are not that potent as a CYP inhibitor. Very, very rare po na ma-inhibit nila yung CYP. Alright? Ano pa? Your proton pump inhibitors affect absorption. Absorption of vitamin B12. What else? Iron. Pwede din. Ano pa? Calcium, zinc. So be careful in giving this in patients with CKD. Right? Kasi, di ba, in patients with CKD, they have hypocalcemia, they have anemia. So usually they need this. They need this minerals and vitamins. And proton pump inhibitors may affect the absorption of this. So just watch out for that. Okay? And that's it for your proton pump inhibitors. So don't forget them kasi wala pong board na hindi pa nagtanong regarding proton pump inhibitors. All right. So we go now to the next. We go to the mucosal protectants. So sino-sino naman po itong mga mucosal protectants natin? We have misoprostol, sucralfate, and bismuth salt. So ito naman po walang kinalaman sa acid. Pinoprotektahan lamang po niya ang gastric mucosa. And therefore, what's their use? Generally, they're given in cases of ulcer. Okay, they're given in cases of ulcer. So we first go to the first drug, your misoprostol. So very easy. So just remember misoprostol, prost. So therefore, it's a prostaglandin analog, specifically PGE analog. So among the prostaglandin, I want you to remember PGE and PGI. Because PGE and PGI are the prostaglandins that are vasodilators. Okay? So, mga prostaglandins po, generally, they are vasoconstrictors except your PGE and PGI. So, how do you remember this? Just sing the nursery rhyme. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, vasodilation. PGE, PGI. Alright? So, your misoprostol is a PGE analog. So, basta may prost po sa name ng drug, analog yan ng prostaglandin like latano, prost, carbo, prost, yung mga yan. Okay? So, our topic for now is your misoprostol. So, it's a PGE analog which increase mucus or bicarbonate secretion, leading now, of course, to the protection of the gastric mucosa. So, your misoprostol increases mucosal protection, sabi nga natin, by increasing mucus and bicarbonate production. And also, it inhibits acid secretion. So, your misoprostol is effective in reducing the risk of ulcers in NSAID users. Kaya lang po, it's not widely used because of the need of multiple daily dosing. Okay? Multiple daily dosing and ang kanilang pangit po na adverse effects like abdominal discomfort and diarrhea. Okay? So, it's orally administered and it can cause abdominal discomfort and most of the time, this is severe type. Kaya po hindi siya natotolerate ng mga patients. And this is one of the reason bakit hindi siya most commonly used. Okay? Another thing is that nadungisan na po ang pangalan ng misoprostol in the past because it is used as an abortifacient. That's why it's not given to pregnant patient. This is considered as category X. FDA category X. You cannot give this to pregnant patients because it is considered as an abortive fashion, because prostaglandin E, just like any prostaglandin, can stimulate uterine contraction and can also lead to cervical ripening. Tama ba? So, yun ang nangyayari, kaya po ginagamit siya ng mga masasamang loob as an abortive fashion. Well, in fact, hindi naman talaga yun ang gamit ng misoprostol. Pang-ulcer siya. Kaya lang naging infamous siya because of that. Okay, so that is your misoprostol. Next, we have sucralfate. This came out in the boards last 2019. Okay, so sucralfate is an aluminum sucrose sulfate. Okay, or a sucrose complex with sulfated aluminum hydroxide. Kaya nga siya sucralfate. Sucrose complex with sulfated aluminum hydroxide. Sucralfate. Okay? So, this drug is poorly soluble. Okay, so they just polymerize when exposed in the acidic environment of the stomach. So the polymers now that are formed binds to the injured tissue. So magbabind sila doon sa may sugat, sa may ulcer, and then it would form a protective coating on the ulcer. Ganun ang MOA ng sucralfate. Okay? So therefore, nung nagpolymerize siya, kinumutan niya yung ulcer. Is that clear? So therefore, nung kinumutan niya yung ulcer, it can accelerate the healing of these ulcers and of course, reduce the recurrence rate. Okay? Kaya lang po, sabi natin, hindi rin siya madalas ginagamit kasi kailangan nga po ng multiple dosing. So usually po, 4 times a day siya kailangan inumin. And that is too hassle for the patient. So kapag ganon, multiple dosing ayaw natin kasi yung risk for non-compliance of the patient is very, very mataas. Right? Is that clear? So, toxicity speaking naman, medyo relatively safe siya. Yun nga lang, ang sabi natin kanina, hindi siya tinatake not because of their adverse effects, but because, yun nga, kailangan 4 times a day siya. Pero toxicity-wise, relatively safe naman siya because sucralfate is a polymer. So therefore, it is insoluble. So yung kanyang chance na ma-absorb, very, very low. That's why systemic effects is rare also. Okay? So that's your sucralfate. Mechanism of action, not clear, sabi natin, pero sabi ko, it coats the mucosa. It's a polymer and it would coat the mucosa, specifically the location of the ulcer. Leading now to, yun nga, yung protective coating ng ulcer and accelerates the healing. Adverse reaction is constipation, but I want you to tell me why. Tell me why. Oh, why? Bakit kaya may constipation ng adverse effect niya? Because of aluminum. Very good. Diba? Ala, tae. So that's why for sucralfate, constipation ang kanyang ADR. Right? Next, we have your bismuth salts, which are considered a slurry preparation. Medyo malagkit-lagkit po yan. It also coats the mucosa. So bismuth has multiple actions, including number 1, formation of a protective coating on ulcerated tissue just like your sucralfate. Ano pa ang ginagawa ng bismuth? It would also stimulate mucosal protective mechanisms and meron din po siyang a bit of antimicrobial effect. So when they ask you which of the following mucosal protectants have antimicrobial effect, the answer is bismuth. Okay, the answer is bismuth. So they are available as bismuth salts in the form of your bismuth salicylate, bismuth citrate, and bismuth subcitrate. Now, I want you to take note and watch out for when you are giving a drug that is your bismuth salicylate. You have to take note of hypersensitivity reaction, which can immediately proceed into anaphylaxis and anaphylactic shock. Okay? What else? Your bismuth salicylate, this is non-prescription, OTC medication po yan. And it also reduces stool frequency. It also reduces stool frequency. So meron siyang constipative effect just like your aluminum. Okay? So ang pinaka-common po na ADR na board-worthy, tandaan for bismuth is blackening of the stool. Blackening of the stool. Is this melena, doc? No, because when you say melena, the black stool is made up of blood, right? The oxidized hemoglobin. Ito po, yung mismong dumi, walang dugo. Naging kulay black lang talaga, namantsahan because of bismuth. Actually, heavy metals po, nagkakos ng blackening of the stool, just like your iron. Tama ba? So, ganun din po si bismuth. Ano pa, hindi lang po tae ang nangingitim. Pwede rin pong magkaroon ng black gums. Okay? Umitim ang gilagid. Sometimes in other books like in Lippincott, they describe this as blue-black discoloration of the gums. So that is the same. Is that clear? All right, so that is your bismuth salt. So we go now to the next class of drugs. And that is your drugs that increase gastric motility. So hinga muna ng malalim before we continue our discussion. So we go now to the drugs that increase gastric motility. And itong mga drugs na to, tinatawag din po natin silang prokinetic agents. So they are just the same. So since they are prokinetic agents, the drugs stimulate the GIT motility and are helpful for gastroparesis. Okay, so they stimulate, again, GI motility and are helpful for gastroparesis and for post-surgical gastric emptying delay. And also their ability to increase lower esophageal sphincter pressure also makes them useful for some patients with GERD. So yan po yung mga gamit ng ating mga prokinetic agents. So hindi lang po sila pang gastroparesis, ginagamit din po sila for GERD because of their ability to increase the lower esophageal sphincter pressure, which is in the first place the one that is problematic in patients with GERD. Okay? So a little bit of physiology po tayo. What are the factors that increase gastric motility? So we have gastrin, acetylcholine, and motilin. So the mnemonic here is GAM. So as you can see here, so you have gastrin, acetylcholine, and motilin. So naalala po ba ito kanina? You have gastrin and acetylcholine from a while ago, which also increase gastric acid production. So pag tinanong sa board exam, which of the following neurotransmitters or chemical substances increase both gastric motility and gastric acid secretion? Answer, gastrin and acetylcholine. Okay, kasi sila yung pareho. Your histamine only increase gastric acid but not gastric motility. On the other hand, your motilin increase gastric motility but not acid secretion. So yung nag-i-increase po ng both is gastrin and acetylcholine. Is that clear? Another important concept na madalas pong napagbabaligtad natin is the effect of dopamine on GIT motility. So remember, dopamine inhibits motility. Okay? Dopamine inhibits motility. So tandaan po, dopamine, di gagalaw. Okay? So dopamine letter D, di gumagalaw. Okay? So kapag may dopamine ka, hindi gumagalaw ang GIT. Di gumagalaw. Letter D, dopamine, di gumagalaw. Naintindihan? So always remember that. Useful for the board exam. Okay? So, first you have your cholinergic agonist because as we said a while ago, acetylcholine increases gastric motility. So for your drugs that increase acetylcholine, you have your cholinergic agonists. Okay? So what's the basis here? Tandaan po, pag sinabing cholinergic, is it sympathetic or parasympathetic? When we say cholinergic, we're talking about parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. So kapag parasympathetic po, increased gastric motility. Okay? So these are the drugs that are considered cholinergic agonists. You have your pilocarpine, betanicol, and neostigmine. So your pilocarpine and betanicol, they are your direct-acting cholinergic agonists, right? On the other hand, your neostigmine is your indirect-acting cholinergic agonist by inhibiting acetylcholinesterase. So kapag ininhibit po si acetylcholinesterase, wala pong magde-degrade kay acetylcholine, acetylcholine will increase. Okay, is that clear? So sila pong tatlo, ano ang kanilang receptors? Your muscarinic 3 receptors. Your M3 receptors. Ano po ang kanilang adverse effect? Lahat po ng parasympathetic effect. Okay, like diaphoresis and diarrhea, urination, meiosis, bradycardia, emesis, lacrimation, and salivation. So remember, dumbbells. Diarrhea or diaphoresis, urination, meiosis, bradycardia, emesis, lacrimation, and salivation. In short, lahat ng basa lumalabas. That is for your cholinergic agonist. Next class of drugs are your dopamine 2 antagonists. So what's the basis? Sabi natin, anong effect ng dopamine sa GIT motility? Di gumagalaw. So when you antagonize dopamine, gagalaw na siya. So pwede natin siyang panggamot for very good, gastroparesis, or these are the drugs that would increase gastric motility. So example of your D2 antagonist, you have your metoclopramide. Metoclopramide crosses the blood-brain barrier. That's why once it reaches the chemoreceptor trigger zone or the area postrema, it can inhibit it, working now as an anti-emetic. Okay? And since it crosses the blood-brain barrier, it can cause extrapyramidal symptom by antagonizing dopamine. So therefore, since remember these are dopamine 2 antagonists, their effect is to decrease dopamine. So kung umabot po yung gamot sa brain natin, specifically affecting the nigrostriatal pathway, it can cause extrapyramidal symptoms or Parkinson-like effect. Pag umabot po yan in the tuberoinfundibular pathway, it can cause endocrine side effects. So anong endocrine side effect ang pwedeng mag-cause? Okay, so remember po that dopamine is also known as your prolactin inhibitory hormone. So your dopamine is a prolactin inhibitory hormone. Now, you give your D2 antagonist. So nung nagbigay ka ng D2 antagonist, anong mangyayari kay dopamine? Bababa si dopamine. Tama ba? Bababa si dopamine. So kung siya ay prolactin inhibitory hormone, mababa ang dopamine mo, konti ang mag-i-inhibit kay dopamine, you will have hyperprolactinemia. So presenting with galactorrhea. So that would be the endocrine side effect of metoclopramide. Naintindihan? So hyperprolactinemia presenting with galactorrhea. So pag tinanong naman kayo, what is the treatment for galactorrhea? So you give your dopamine agonist naman. Okay? Like your bromocriptine or your cabergoline, right? These are your dopamine agonists. Sila yung pang-treat for hyperprolactinemia. Pero ang metoclopramide na dopamine 2 antagonist, it can precipitate hyperprolactinemia by involving the tuberoinfundibular pathway. Okay? And since this is a dopamine 2 antagonist, di gagalaw, and then antagonist, so papagalawin niya. So it is used for the treatment of gastroparesis. Kaya lang, if ang problema mo lang po ay abdominal fullness or gastroparesis, would you like to use metoclopramide? Gagalaw nga ang GIT mo, napakadami namang side effects related to the CNS because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So, Doc, paano po yan? Meron po ba tayong gamot na dopamine 2 antagonist din but it does not cross the blood-brain barrier? Meron po. And that is our domperidone. So, domperidone po, same na dopamine 2 antagonist with our metoclopramide. But this time, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier. So kung hindi siya magkakross ng blood-brain barrier, it won't reach the area postrema or the chemoreceptor trigger zone. So therefore, it cannot be used as an antiemetic. Since it cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, you won't expect patients to have extrapyramidal symptoms. Since it does not cross the blood-brain barrier, you won't expect to be involving the tuberoinfundibular pathway. Wala po yun as compared to your metoclopramide. Is that clear? Okay. So that is your domperidone. What is the brand name of domperidone? Para hindi nyo makalimutan, Motilium. Because domperidone increases gastric motility. Is that clear? All right. All right. So, Doc, may question po ako. Sabi niyo po, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier. How come domperidone can be used for the stimulation of postpartum lactation? So, I want to emphasize that the drug itself does not cross the blood-brain barrier. Okay? Hanggang sa peripheral system lang po yan. But the mere fact that you are inhibiting dopamine in the periphery will increase prolactin. Okay? So, it is now the prolactin that will now take effect into the stimulation of postpartum lactation. But the drug itself does not cross the blood-brain barrier. It's the effect of the drug, which is the increase in prolactin, the one that is responsible for the stimulation of postpartum lactation. All right? Is that clear? Sige. Next drug that we have that is considered as a prokinetic agent is erythromycin. Still remember erythromycin? It is a macrolide, right? Which is included in your protein synthesis inhibitors, specifically the 50S ribosomal subunit. And your erythromycin, in this case, is given parenterally. Okay, in this case. So, bakit po, Doc, nakasama sa prokinetic agent si erythromycin and antibacterial po yan? Because erythromycin promotes motilin release. Tandaan po to, ilang beses na po ito lumabas sa board exam. What antibiotic promotes motilin release? Answer, erythromycin. So therefore, since it promotes motilin release, papagalawin niya yung GIT. Kaya adverse effect niya is diarrhea. Okay? And this time, this is a positive ADR if you are having gastroparesis or constipation. Is that clear? So that's your erythromycin. It promotes motilin release. Is that clear? Okay. So we can now move on to the next classes of drugs. We have your laxatives. So laxatives are used in cases, of course, of constipation wherein matigas ang pupo or hindi man matigas ang pupo, hindi ka pa rin makapupo kasi hindi gumagalaw ang intestine. So these are the two types of the causes of constipation. It's either matigas ang pupo or hindi talaga gumagalaw ang intestines. So what are the therapeutic indications of our laxatives? Number one, for the short-term relief of constipation. So generally speaking, when we give laxative, dapat acute use lang po. Short term lang po. Because of the takot po tayo sa pwedeng mangyari na tinatawag nating laxative habit. Okay? Ayaw po natin yan mangyari kung saan ang patient po, dependent na po siya sa laxative. Wherein the patient cannot defecate anymore without the help of the laxative. So ito po yung iniiwasan natin mangyari, ang laxative habit. So generally speaking, laxatives are given short term. There is only one type of laxative that can be given long term, which we will study later on. It can also be used for the prevention of straining conditions like in heart failure, MI, post-op patients. Diba ayaw natin na umiire sila? So dapat swabe ang paglabas ng kanilang pupo para no ire. What else? Preparation of diagnostic examination like colonoscopy, ano pa, proctoscopy or anoscopy or sigmoidoscopy, right? What else? Removal of poisons or toxins in the body, and also adjunct in anthelmintic therapy. Okay? So nagbigay ka ng pang-deworm, hindi naman makadumi yung patient mo. So you can give your laxative para paglabas ng pupo, kasama lalabas ang bulate. Okay? How about the contraindications to laxative use? So you have your acute abdomen. Okay? So any acute abdominal disorders, appendicitis, diverticulitis, ulcerative colitis, kahit na anong itis po yan, contraindicated po ang laxative use because when we use laxative, there is a chance of bowel rupture. Pwede pong pumutok ang bituka. Okay, so this is a contraindication. And this is very, very crucial because ito pong mga to, acute abdomen, hindi ba they present with gastrointestinal tract obstruction symptoms. Okay, intestinal obstructive symptoms. So therefore, akalain mo na hindi lang siya natatae. Okay, yun pala, kaya hindi siya natatae kasi your patient is already having acute abdomen. Is that clear? So you cannot give laxative unless acute abdomen is ruled out. Again, why? Because of the risk of bowel rupture. Okay? So, common side effects of the laxatives, of course, diarrhea, abdominal cramping, nausea, at since dumi ka ng dumi, you can have fluid and electrolyte imbalance. Okay? And since dumi ka ng dumi, kailangan merong mag-compensate. Sympathetic reactions of sweating, palpitations, flushing, and fainting that can happen. Syncopal attacks can also happen. Okay, but that's very, very rare. And the laxative habit or cathartic dependence. So ayaw po natin yan mangyari. So again, generally speaking po, we cannot give laxative for a long time or for chronic use. All right? So we go now to the different types of laxatives. First type is your bulk-forming laxative, like your Citrocel, Psyllium, and your polycarbophil. Ano po ang ginagawa nila? Ina-absorb niya yung water. Para saan? Para maging bulky yung pupo. In short po, ang bulk-forming laxatives, ginagawa lang niyang malaki yung pupo mo. Okay? Because kapag malaki po ang pupo in the intestine, it will cause bowel distension. Pag nagkaroon po ng bowel distension, the stretch receptors there in the GIT mucosa will be stimulated, leading now to increase in peristalsis. So in short, tatae ka dahil lumaki yung pupo mo. Yun yung action ng bulk-forming laxatives. And among all laxatives, ito lang po yung pinaka pwede na gamitin for chronic use. Nag-iisa lang po yan, your bulk-forming laxatives. Okay? Next naman po na laxative is your osmotic laxative. Ang osmotic laxative naman po, hindi sila na-absorb sa GIT. So they just remain in the lumen of the GIT. And through osmosis, they will pull water into the lumen. Magtatawag sila ng tubig papunta dun sa lumen, leading now to liquefaction of the stool. So therefore, mas madali siyang ilabas. Example of that is your magnesium hydroxide. So naalala pa si magnesium hydroxide kanina? besides being an antacid, di ba? Magtatae. So anong klase ng pagtatae ang kinokos nito? Osmotic type. Is that clear? Okay. Ano pa? Bukod dyan. Mas kilala nyo siguro sila. Lactulose. Same din po na osmotic laxative. What else? Your glycerin suppository. Osmotic laxative as well. Okay? So kapag ganun po, sabi natin, nagpupull sila ng water into the GIT lumen leading to liquefaction of the stool. So mas madali na pong dumumi. Another thing for osmotic laxative, it also causes duodenal secretion of cholecystokinin or CCK, which would increase fluid secretion and gastric motility, contributing now to its laxative effect. Okay? So again, tandaan po si lactulose, si glycerin, at si magnesium hydroxide, all of them are osmotic laxatives. Can you give this chronically? No, only your bulk-forming laxatives. Next, you have your surfactant laxatives. Surfactant laxative po, ang ibang tawag sa kanila, stool softeners or emollient laxatives. So here, you can see your stool softeners, emollient laxatives, surfactant laxatives, same banana. Okay? So anong ginagawa nila? Since surfactant yan, it lowers the surface tension. So kung nilower po niya yung surface tension, it will facilitate water penetration in the stool, leading now again to liquefaction of the stool. So mas mabilis siyang ipupo. Example of your surfactant laxative is your Docusate. Okay? So no need for the brand name, no need for the brand name. Just remember, Docusate. Surfactant laxative po yan or stool softener. Okay, is that clear? Okay, good. Next, we have your stimulant laxatives. This time naman po, it stimulates peristalsis. So wala na po siyang action patungo doon sa pupo. Ang action nito sa GIT mismo. Ini-increase niya ang peristalsis. Okay, so that is the main contributory effect to its laxative effect or contributory factor to its laxative effect the moment it stimulates peristalsis. Example of that I want you to remember for the boards is Bisacodil, brand name Dulcolax. Very, very common. Ang Bisacodil po at Dulcolax, that's the brand name, is used as a stimulant laxative. So, ini-stimulate niya ang peristalsis. Okay? Is that clear? That is your stimulant laxatives. Okay? Ano pa? Your, sabi natin, Bisacodil. Ano pa? Your anthraquinone derivatives. These are your glycosides. And also, castor oil. But for the board exam, just remember, Bisacodil. A stimulant laxative. Is that clear? Okay. How about yung mga pampadulas ng GIT para mas hayahay lumabas si pupo? That is your lubricant laxative. Pampadulas po, you have your mineral oil. Is that clear? So those are the different types of laxative. So sana naintindihan nyo, isa lang ang ginagawa nila. Pinapatae ka lang nila. Pero sa magkakaibang paraan. Si bulk forming laxative, pinapalaki niya yung pupo mo, causing GIT distension, so increase peristalsis. Tama ba? Si osmotic laxative naman po, ano ang ginagawa niya? It will stay there at the lumen of the GIT and it will pull water towards itself, leading now to the liquefaction of the stool. Example of your osmotic laxative is your lactulose and your glycerin. Pag surfactant naman, nilolower niya yung surface tension. Ibig sabihin, para lang hindi po magharang o magkaroon ng harang between the surface of the stool and the water. So, binibreak niya lang po yung surface tension para pumasok po ang tubig sa loob ng pupo para siya ay maging liquefied para mas mabilis ilabas. Is that clear? And then, lastly, you have your stimulant laxatives. na nag-i-stimulate mismo ng peristalsis. Is that clear? All right. Okay. Another class of drug is your anti-flatulent, like your simethicone, which is most of the time in combination of your antacids. So your aluminum and magnesium, they are your antacids. Your simethicone here is your anti-flatulent. Okay? So it's your simethicone. Simethicone is an example of a silicon derivative. Silicon derivative po siya. And the action of your simethicone is to break. Okay? The action of your simethicone is to break gas bubbles in the stomach. So yun po ang ginagawa niya. So your simethicone, derivative of silicon, and the mechanism of action is to break gas bubbles in the stomach. Kaya po, kung mabe-break apart yung mga gas bubbles po, hindi ka magkakaroon ng flatulence. Okay? Next, we have your bowel evacuants. Ito po yung mga tinatawag nating enema, which includes your polyethylene glycol and sodium phosphate or your fleet enema. Okay? I just want you to remember also polyethylene glycol, this is the agent for whole bowel irrigation. Okay? Whole bowel irrigation po, that's your polyethylene glycol. Dok, kailan po yan ginagamit? For example, we have a patient here who is poisoned and we want the patient to defecate all the poison in his body. So gusto natin po na linisin yung kanyang intestine so we can give your polyethylene glycol or your PEG, which is used for whole bowel irrigation. So malilinis niya talaga yung buong bituka, especially the colon, kasi po idudumi mo yun. Is that clear? Okay. So we go to the last class of drugs for this topic, and that would be the drugs for inflammatory bowel disease. Okay? So, ano po ba ang mga gamot natin for inflammatory bowel disease? Actually, when we say IBD, this is comprised of your Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So, ang mga gamot po natin dyan ay ang ating mga 5-amino salicylic acid. So take note, this is amino salicylic acid. This is different from acetyl salicylic acid. So your 5-amino salicylic acid is also known as mesalamine or sometimes called mesalazine. That's the same. So they are used for the treatment of IBD. Pag sinabi po ditong topical, don't think na sa balat po. Ibig sabihin po niyan sa mismong colonic mucosa or in the GIT mucosa po. Ano ang ginagawa po niya? They inhibit the synthesis of prostaglandin and inflammatory leukotriene. So in short po, ang kanilang action is anti-inflammatory. Because remember, what are we treating? Correct. Inflammatory bowel disease. So what's the MOA? Decrease inflammation. How? Decreasing the inflammation mediators like your prostaglandins and your leukotrienes. All right? So that's your 5-amino salicylic acid or mesalamine or mesalazine. Okay? Is that clear? So, proprietary formulations, ibig sabihin branded formulations of 5-amino salicylic acid, you have your Pentasa, Asacol, and Lialda. So, they are generically known as mesalamine, okay, or 5-ASA. These are the brand names. Brand names po yung mga yan. And they are readily available in the small intestine, and they are used for the treatment of IBD, sabi nga natin. So, you can see here that they affect or they have affinity to different segments of the intestines, which I will emphasize later on. Okay, which I will emphasize later on. On the other hand, yung mga newer generations, ito kasing lolo, si 5-ASA. Yung mga newer generations like balsalazide, olsalazine, and sulfasalazine, they are just modification of the 5-amino salicylic acid. Okay? They are just modification of the 5-amino salicylic acid. And since they contain sulfa group like your sulfasalazine. So we expect adverse effects such as your Stevens-Johnson syndrome or SJS. Tandaan po, in pharmacology, basta sulfa drug, SJS po yan. Is that clear? Alright. Okay, so summary po, pag sinabing treatment for IBD, we have here your 5-ASA, 5-amino-salicylic acid. Anong other name niya? Mesalamine. Ano pang other name niya? Mesalazine. Anong mga brand name niya? Pentasa, Asacol, Lialda. Mamaya, meron pa mamaya, Rowasa. Those are the brand names of your 5-ASA. And these different brands affect different portions of the GIT. So mamaya ipo-point out ko ano yung dapat tandaan at yung mga lumabas na. Newer generations of your 5-ASA, you have balsalazide, olsalazine, and sulfasalazine. But among the three, the most notorious for causing adverse effect is sulfasalazine because it is sulfa containing and it contains sulfapyridine. Okay? So, therefore, it can cause Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Is that clear? All right. So, ito na po yung sinasabi ko. Depende po kung saang segment ng small intestine ang effect ng bawat drug. So just remember, number 1, pentasa. Pag pentasa po, jejunum up to the rectum. So buong yan. Buo. Small intestine and colon. Your sulfasalazine and balsalazide, tandaan po yan, sulfasalazine and balsalazide only for the colon. So ito po ang ginagamit natin, not for Crohn's disease, but for ulcerative colitis mainly. Okay, mainly po for ulcerative colitis yan. Because their effect is only on the colon. Look, no effect on the small intestine. Okay? So kapag pinakamalawak ng coverage, pentasa, jejunum to rectum. Asacol and Lialda, ilium naman po to rectum. Ilium to rectum. Sulfasalazine and balsalazide, colon only. Rowasa, sigmoid and rectum. Canasa, rectum only. Okay? So these are the things that are important. So ano po yung mga lumabas na sa boards? Eto. I will use a different color of pen ha so that you will remember. Lumabas na sa board, pentasa. Okay? So ang coverage niya, jejunum to rectum. Lumabas na rin po si canasa. Pag canasa, rectum lang po. Okay? Is that clear? So tandaan nyo na rin si Rowasa, although di pa lumalabas, baka ilabas nila this time. Rowasa, sigmoid, and rectum. Is that clear? Alright. So these are the main treatment for IBD. Actually, the initial treatment for IBD. And all of these are derivatives of amino-salicylic acid. ASA. Kaya po ang name niyan, laging may ASA. Pentasa, Asacol, Rowasa, Canasa. All of them are derivatives of amino-salicylic acid. Sino sa mga to ang notorious for causing Stevens-Johnson syndrome? Very good. Your sulfasalazine because of the sulfa group coming from sulfapyridine. Okay? So, tandaan yan. How about the other drugs or other modes of therapy that we can employ in patients with IBD? So, this is actually a hierarchy from mild up to severe disease. Okay? So, ito po ang tatandaan. Kapag ang patient natin mild lang ang disease, then we can give your 5-aminosalicylates. Yung mga inaral natin kanina. Rowasa, Pentasa, etc. Okay? Ngayon po, pag mas lumala, we can use your or methotrexate, azathioprine, or madaling sabi, we can use your, what do you call them generally? Very good, your DMARDs. Okay? Ngayon po, pag lumala lalo for severe naman po, just remember we can use your TNF antagonist and your monoclonal antibody. Last resort po natin ang surgery. Okay? So let's go back. Hierarchy. Aminosalicylates muna. Then DMARDs. then you have your monoclonal antibody or your biologicals, then last po is surgery. Lumabas po ito sa board exam. What is the, parang tinanong ano yung last choice of management in IBD? And the answer is surgery. Okay, surgery. So magsisimula ka sa 5-ASA, then DMARDs, then biologicals, then last po, surgery. Is that clear? Okay. So good luck on your exams, and I hope that you have learned something from me. Okay? So you can do it. Aral ng mabuti and dasal ng madami. I'll see you next time. All right? Bye-bye.